I have a question for you today that has literally been keeping me up at night. And it's about a paradox in the Bible that is so glaring. Once you see it, you really cannot unsee it.
Well, I love a good paradox. What's keeping you awake?
So I want you to think about the Old Testament for a second. The Bible dedicates hundreds of chapters, incredibly detailed, minute instructions to the construction of a tent, the tabernacle. It tells us exactly what kind of thread to use, the specific shade of purple for the curtains, the exact dimensions of the bronze clasps. It just goes on for page after page.
Yeah, the details really matter in those sections. It's basically an architectural blueprint.
Exactly. But then we get to the single greatest conflict in the history of the universe, the event that literally defined the origin of evil, the moment the cosmos broke. And how much space does the Bible give the war in heaven? 3 verses.
You're talking about Revelation chapter 12.
Yes. 3 verses. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. That's it. It's almost telegraphic. It's so dry. So here is the shocking question. Why does God give us the exact blueprints for a tent, but stays completely silent on the details of the war in heaven?
It is a really jarring contrast, isn't it? You expect this massive, sprawling epic, and you get a summary.
It feels like a massive gap in the narrative. And that brings us to the topic of our deep dive today. We are looking at the cosmic silence. And honestly, going through our source material, I'm starting to think that everything I thought I knew about the war in heaven might not even be in the Bible at all.
That is a very distinct possibility.
So let's unpack this. Let's investigate the biblical evidence.
Let's do it. And I think the best place to start is by managing our expectations right out of the gate. Because in this deep dive, we're going to uncover 5 shocking truths about why God chose silence over detail regarding the war in heaven.
5 truths. Okay, I'm ready. And I know we have some heavy-hitting sources to back this up. We're actually looking at the original Greek text of Revelation today, right?
We are. We're going to be digging into the specific Greek word polemos, and we're also going to look at the Hebrew context of Isaiah and Ezekiel. Because, honestly, to understand this cosmic silence, you have to look at the original languages.
Okay, but before we get into the Greek, I have to play the role of the frustrated believer here. Our source material introduces a character named Elias who asks the exact question I'm thinking. He basically says, doesn't knowing the details of the enemy help us fight him? Like, if we knew the tactics used in the war in heaven, wouldn't we be better equipped for spiritual warfare down here?
It's a completely logical question. I mean, we want intel. We want a dossier on the enemy. But the thesis of our source material is crucial here. The Bible is not an encyclopedia of celestial curiosities. It is the history of human redemption.
So it's strictly on a need-to-know basis?
Precisely. And apparently, God decided we just didn't need to know the choreography of the war in heaven. But that decision, that silence, is actually a weapon in itself.
Wow. Well, listener, if you want biblical mysteries revealed, you're in the right place. Because if this silence is a weapon in spiritual warfare, I definitely want to know how to use it. But let's go back to the text. You mentioned Revelation 12.
Yes, verses 7 through 9.
But here's where it gets strange. The text says the dragon was expelled. Boom. Done. And then the history immediately moves to the earth. It literally feels like we skipped the best part of the movie.
It does feel that way. But the revelation here is that this brevity, this telegraphic style, is actually a profound form of protection.
Protection. How does knowing less protect us?
Think about it. If the Bible gave us a detailed biography of evil, if it described every weapon, every tactic, every persuasive argument Lucifer used, what would happen?
I guess. You'd be completely fascinated by it.
Exactly. We would risk turning Satan into a protagonist. The Bible avoids that at all costs. In any story, the character you spend the most time with, the one whose backstory you understand the deepest, often becomes the one you empathize with, or at least the one you focus on.
That's so true. I mean, we love a good villain origin story in movies. We want to know what made them tick.
Right. But the Bible outright refuses to give evil that platform. Look at Revelation 12, verses 7 through 9 again. There are no descriptions of weapons. There's no epic dialogue, no "join me and we can rule the galaxy" speeches. It simply says, Michael and his angels fought.
But wait, this means The lack of detail isn't just an oversight by John on the island of Patmos, it's a deliberate refusal to glorify the enemy.
It absolutely is. The silence desanitizes the event. It strips away all the glamour.
And that leads us to the nature of the fight itself. Because when we hear war in heaven, we immediately imagine swords, lightning, maybe some energy blasts.
Oh, definitely lightning bolts.
Okay.
Most people picture a massive physical clash.
But here's where it gets strange. If it wasn't a physical brawl with angels wrestling in the clouds, what actually was it?
This is where the original language changes everything. The revelation here is that this wasn't a battlefield. It was a courtroom.
A courtroom.
A courtroom. Let's look at the Greek word used for war in verse 7. It's polemos. Now, that can mean war, sure, but in this specific context, in considering the outcome, it focuses heavily on a judicial dispute, a legal battle.
Wow.
And the evidence is right there in the very next verse. Look at Revelation 12, verse 10. It describes the dragon as the accuser of our brethren.
The accuser. Wait, that is a legal term.
Exactly. It's prosecuting language. And the source describes his expulsion not as a military retreat, but as the execution of a legal sentence. The text says their place was no longer found in heaven. That's jurisdictional language. He literally lost his legal standing to prosecute humanity.
Whoa. So Michael wasn't necessarily the general of an army. He was more like a bailiff.
In a sense, yes. Michael, whose name means who is like God, acts as the executor of the divine will. The source makes a very strong point here. This was not a balanced fight. This wasn't dualism, like the Force in Star Wars where the light side and dark side are equal and just wrestling for control.
Right. That's exactly how we usually picture spiritual warfare. Two heavyweights in the ring going back and forth.
But the Bible rejects that entirely. God is sovereign. The war in heaven was simply the removal of a trespasser who lost his legal standing because of what Christ did.
But wait, this means it wasn't a struggle where God was sweating the outcome. It was just a sentence being carried out.
Precisely. He was evicted.
And that leads us to a huge question. If he was just evicted legally, where in the world do we get these vivid images of a beautiful, glowing angel falling gracefully from the sky? Because that's not in Revelation 12.
No, it's not. That imagery usually comes from the Old Testament, specifically Isaiah chapter 14 and Ezekiel chapter 28.
Right. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. That's the classic war in heaven text.
It is. But here is where it gets strange.
Okay, I'm ready.
Here's what most people don't know. The revelation here is that those passages, technically they are oracles against human kings.
Wait, human kings?
Yes. Isaiah 14 is directed at the king of Babylon, and Ezekiel 28 is specifically directed at the king of Tyre.
But hold on, Ezekiel talks about being in Eden, the garden of God. It talks about being a guardian cherub. Surely a human king wasn't a literal cherub in Eden.
And that is the big twist. Our source calls this the Lucifer mirage. The evidence is right in the text. Ezekiel explicitly speaks of the king of Tyre's obsession with commerce and maritime trade. Why would a celestial angel care about sea trade? Isaiah speaks of the king of Babylon's imperial arrogance, saying, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. The original text reveals something shocking here.
What is it?
The Bible uses these human kings as a typology, a shadow. It uses the history of these proud, corrupt, human CEOs and emperors to show us the DNA of evil, the pattern of the original fall. But it absolutely refuses to give us the literal historical biography of Satan.
Both express surprise. But wait, this means the name Lucifer, which only appears once in that context, is just a title for a human king who thought he was a god. We are looking at a human mirror, not the actual celestial event.
Exactly. We get the moral characteristics of the fall, the pride, the corruption of wisdom, but we don't get the backstage pass. That is a huge part of the cosmic silence.
And that leads us to ask, if the Bible didn't give us the epic backstory, if Revelation is just a legal summary and Isaiah is a poetic shadow who gave us the movie script playing in my head, because I have a very clear picture of this war in heaven.
You do. I do too. But here's where it gets strange.
Tell me.
The revelation is that our visuals come from religious fan fiction.
Fan fiction? Are you serious?
Dead serious. Specifically, incredibly high-quality literary fan fiction. We are talking about John Milton's Paradise Lost and Dante's Divine Comedy.
Milton, the guy who wanted to write the ultimate Christian epic.
He did. And the evidence of his influence is everywhere. Milton wanted to give Christianity its own version of Homer's Iliad. He wanted heroes, villains, sweeping speeches, and drama. But in doing so, he unintentionally humanized the conflict.
Humanized it how?
He gave Satan complex psychological motivations. In Paradise Lost, Satan is almost tragic. He has depth. He has this reason for his rebellion that feels almost noble to the reader. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. That's Milton. That is not the Bible.
Wow. This changes everything. I quote that thinking it's scripture.
Most people do. It's brilliant poetry, but it's terrible theology. The source notes that the Bible keeps the cosmic silence to desanitize evil. In the Bible, evil isn't tragic. It isn't deep or misunderstood. It's just absurd. It's chaotic and rebellious without any valid cause.
But wait, this means we have literally been reading Milton into Revelation instead of just reading Revelation. We've been romanticizing the war in heaven.
Exactly. We've given the devil a PR makeover that God purposefully denied him.
And that leads us to the most unsettling part of this whole deep dive. Why hide the how? Why not explain the seduction of the angels? Going back to Elias's question from earlier, if we knew how a perfect angel in a perfect environment chose to sin, wouldn't we be better prepared to avoid it?
It seems like we would, but here's where it gets strange. The source argues that wanting to know those mechanics is actually incredibly dangerous.
Dangerous? How?
Prepare yourself. The revelation here is that the cosmic silence is a firewall. It's a divine safety mechanism.
A firewall against what?
Against the fascination of the abyss. The evidence for this is the biblical concept of the mystery of iniquity found in 2 Thessalonians. That phrase implies that evil is inherently irrational. There is no logical, justifiable reason for a perfect being to choose sin. So if the Bible tried to detail the logic of that choice, it might accidentally create a formula for sin. It would make sin make sense. The source references the philosopher Nietzsche here. When you stare into the abyss stares back at you.
Brief pause.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
If the Bible gave us a step-by-step manual on how the war in heaven started, we might become obsessed with the mechanism of evil rather than the solution to it. We try to understand the disease instead of taking the cure.
But wait, this means the silence actually forces us to rely on God rather than our own intellectual understanding of evil. It keeps us from getting hypnotized by the darkness.
Thoughtful tone. Exactly. It forces us to look away from the abyss and look toward the light. It's an act of profound grace.
And that leads us to the only weapon that actually matters. Because let's map this out. We've covered a massive amount of ground here.
Let's do it.
First, we started with the paradox.
Yeah.
The Bible prioritizes the cross and human redemption way over the war in heaven.
Right. 3 verses versus hundreds of chapters. Second, we discovered that the war in heaven in Revelation 12 isn't a physical dualistic brawl. It was a legal expulsion. The accuser was disbarred.
A total judicial victory.
Third, we found out that our detailed images of a falling, beautiful angel likely come from descriptions of arrogant human kings in Isaiah and Ezekiel shadows, not biographies.
The Lucifer mirage.
For fourth, we realized that John Milton's fan fiction gave Satan a psychological depth that the Bible purposefully withheld.
Stripping away the romance of evil.
And finally, we learned that this cosmic silence protects us. It is a firewall that keeps us from staring into the abyss.
A purposeful, protective silence.
Listener, if you want to keep having your mind blown by Scripture, make sure you subscribe for more biblical mysteries. Because we are constantly finding these incredible truths hiding in plain sight. But right now, we have to land the plane. We've busted the myths about the war in heaven. We've looked at the Greek. But what does this mean for us today? How does this apply to our daily lives?
This is the most important part of the entire discussion. Because the source points us directly to Revelation 12, verse 11. It tells us exactly how the victory was won and how we are supposed to fight today.
Let me guess. It's not with flaming swords.
No. It says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Notice what is completely missing from that list.
It doesn't say they overcame him by knowing his strategies or by deeply understanding his origin story from the war in heaven.
Exactly. We shouldn't try to fight with angelic weapons we don't understand. We don't need to know the physics of spiritual warfare in the heavenly realms. The victory comes exclusively by the blood of the Lamb.
That is a huge practical shift, because as humans, we always want to be the hero of the story, wielding the sword, outsmarting the enemy. But the source says our only effective weapon is simply relying on what Jesus already did.
The cosmic silence teaches us humility. We don't need to know the backstage of the universe to trust the director. The focus must remain entirely on the victor Christ, not the loser, the dragon.
I love that. The loser. We spend so much time analyzing the loser in spiritual warfare.
And the Bible flat out refuses to give him that airtime. The source has a quote that I think sums this up perfectly. What matters isn't how he fell, but who lifts us up.
Oh, that's so good. I'm going to say that again. What matters isn't how he fell, but who lifts us up.
The silence of God regarding the war in heaven actively pushes us toward the cross. It steers us completely away from idle speculation and points us directly toward salvation.
It's incredible how something that isn't even there, the silence itself, can speak so loudly. It really does change your perspective on everything. Instead of being frustrated that I don't have all the gritty details of the war in heaven, I actually feel relieved.
You absolutely should. You don't have to carry the burden of understanding the mystery of iniquity. You just have to carry your cross. The victory is already legally secured.
So, listener, I have to ask you a question. Does the silence of God regarding the war in heaven bring you peace? Or does it make you more curious?
It's definitely a question you need to wrestle with on your own.
Next time on the Deep Dive, we are going to look at another great silence in Scripture. One that involves the completely undocumented silent years of a very famous biblical figure. You will not want to miss it.
It's going to be another incredible investigation.
If uncovering the truth about the war in heaven resonated with you, subscribe and hit the bell. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway about the war in heaven. Next video. The great silence of the lost years. Your engagement spreads these truths. See you next time.